I was sitting in a vinyl chair next to my daughter's hospital bed, watching her oxygen numbers flicker on the monitor, when my phone lit up with 17 missed calls and a text from my boss that just said, "We need to talk. Now." My hands were still shaking from the last time a nurse had rushed in, and somehow a man I'd never personally wronged was about to try and end my career from a conference room I wasn't even in. A client at my workplace accused me of slacking off while my daughter was in the hospital, but the truth came out swinging. My name is Sable Heron, and I've been a project manager at a commercial interior design firm for almost 9 years. I'm 37, a single mom to a 12-year-old named Ellery, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've made feel bigger than it is through sheer force of will and some very strategic shelving. My life runs on lists, timers, and the kind of stubborn optimism that only people who've been knocked down a few times really understand. I got into project management almost by accident. I started as a receptionist at the firm right after Ellery was born. Her father, Crane, and I had split up during the pregnancy. Not dramatically, just a slow mutual realization that we were better apart than together. He pays child support consistently, I'll give him that. But he lives 3 states away and sees Ellery maybe 4 times a year. So it's mostly me. It's been mostly me since the beginning. The firm, Alcott and Ware, is small, about 30 employees, but we handle big contracts: hotels, restaurant chains, corporate offices. My boss, a woman named Nadia Ferris, hired me as her receptionist and then watched me reorganize the entire filing system in my first month. Within 2 years, she'd moved me into coordination. Within 5, I was managing my own client accounts. Nadia believed in me before I fully believed in myself, and I never forgot that. I think sometimes we build our lives so carefully around being needed that we forget to notice when we're the ones who need help. The client at the center of all this was a man named Vance Driscoll. He ran a regional chain of upscale dental offices, the kind with waterfall walls in the lobby and espresso machines in the waiting room. We'd been contracted to redesign 3 of his locations, and it was the biggest account I've ever managed solo. Vance was precise, demanding, and had the kind of personality that made you feel like you were always one sentence away from disappointing him. But he was professional, or at least I thought he was. My coworker, Teslin, had warned me about him early on. Teslin and I had started at the firm around the same time, and she'd become my closest friend there. The kind of friend who brings you coffee without asking and tells you when you have lipstick on your teeth. Vance Driscoll is a micromanager wrapped in a suit, she told me over lunch one day. He called the last PM at 11 at night to ask about grout color. Grout color, Sable. I can handle grout color. It's not about the grout. It's about control. He wants to feel like he's the most important thing on your plate at all times. I filed that away, but didn't worry about it much. I was good at my job. I hit deadlines. I answered emails within the hour. For the first 3 months of the Driscoll project, everything ran smoothly. I sent weekly progress reports, scheduled check-in calls every Tuesday, and personally visited each site twice a month. Vance was demanding, sure, but manageable. He even told Nadia at one point that I was refreshingly competent. I remember Nadia laughing about that. Refreshingly competent, like competence is surprising? But I took it as a win. Then Ellery got sick. It started with a fever that wouldn't break. I kept her home from school on a Monday, took her to the pediatrician on Tuesday, and by Wednesday night, we were in the emergency room. The doctors ran tests, ran more tests, and by Thursday morning, they told me Ellery had a serious kidney infection that had spread further than it should have. She needed IV antibiotics and monitoring. They were admitting her. I stood in that hospital hallway holding a clipboard of consent forms, and I felt the ground tilt under me. Ellery was tough. She'd always been tough. The kind of kid who got up after falling without crying. But she was scared. I could see it in the way she held my hand, squeezing my fingers so hard her knuckles went white. She was 12, and she was trying so hard not to look 12.
I called Nadia that night from the hospital cafeteria. She didn't hesitate.
"Take the time you need," she said. "I'll have Teslin cover your check-ins. Just send her your notes and we'll keep things moving." "What about Driscoll?" "I'll handle Driscoll. You handle your daughter." I spent the next 5 days at Ellery's bedside. I slept in that vinyl chair, ate vending machine sandwiches, and watched medical staff come and go in a blur of scrubs and clipboard taps. The nights were the worst. Hospitals don't go quiet. They just shift to a different frequency. Beeps, footsteps, the low murmur of a TV from down the hall. Ellery would wake up disoriented, reach for me, and I'd hold her hand until she drifted off again. On day 3, she looked up at me from her pillow. Pale, dark circles under her eyes, an IV taped to the back of her hand, and said, "Mom, are you going to get in trouble at work?" "No, baby. Don't worry about that." "But you're always working, and you're here." "That's because here is where I'm supposed to be." She nodded, like she was filing that away for future reference. Then she asked if I could sneak her real food instead of the Jell-O cups. That was the first moment I thought she might actually be okay. Ellery's fever broke on day 3, came back on day 4, and finally stayed down on day 5. The doctor said she was responding to treatment, but they wanted to keep her a few more days to be safe. During that time, I didn't disappear from work entirely. I answered emails from my phone when Ellery was sleeping. I sent Teslin detailed handoff notes for every active project, including Driscoll's. I even dialed into one call with a vendor because the timeline on a furniture delivery was tight, and I didn't want Teslin to have to negotiate something she didn't have context on. Looking back, I realize I was trying to prove I could hold everything at once, my daughter's hand and my career, and I didn't see that the effort itself was a kind of breaking. What I didn't know was what Vance Driscoll was doing on the other end. Teslin told me later, piece by piece, and then Nadia filled in the rest. Here's what happened while I was watching my daughter's oxygen levels and counting the hours between IV bags. Driscoll had called the office on day 2 of my absence for an unscheduled check-in. Teslin took the call. She was polite, prepared, and walked him through the status update I'd written for her, word by word. "Where's Sable?" he asked. "She's dealing with a family emergency. I'm covering her accounts this week." "What kind of family emergency?" "I'm not able to share the details, but she's left thorough notes and everything is on track." Driscoll didn't like that answer. He called again the next day, and the day after that. Each time, Teslin handled it professionally. Each time, he pushed harder. On the 4th day, he called Nadia directly. "I'm paying your firm a significant amount of money," he said, "and my project manager has apparently decided to take a vacation in the middle of my build-out." Nadia kept her composure. "Sable is dealing with a serious family medical situation. Her accounts are being covered, and your project is on schedule." "On schedule according to who? The substitute? I hired your firm because of Sable's track record, and now I'm getting handed off to someone I've never met." "Teslin is a senior coordinator with 8 years of experience." "I don't care about her resume. I care about results. And from where I'm sitting, this looks like someone who checked out when things got hard." Nadia told me later that she nearly lost her temper on that call. She didn't, but she noted it. The breaking point came on day 5, the same day Ellery's fever finally held steady and the doctors started talking about discharge. My phone lit up with the 17 missed calls and Nadia's text. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, and called her back. "What happened?" Nadia's voice was tight. "Driscoll sent an email to our managing partners this morning. He's claiming project negligence. He's saying you've been unreachable for a week, that deliverables are late, and that he wants you removed from his account." "Deliverables aren't late. I checked the tracker yesterday. Everything is green." "I know. I've already pulled the reports. But he CC'd 3 people above me, Sable. He's trying to make this a performance issue." I leaned against the hospital wall and closed my eyes. My daughter was 20 feet away, finally sleeping without a fever for the first time in 5 days. And a man I'd bent over backward to impress was trying to torch my reputation because I'd had the audacity to be a mother. There are moments where anger and exhaustion hit you at the same time, and instead of canceling each other out, they sharpen into something quiet and precise. "Forward me the email," I said. "All of it." I sat in the hospital cafeteria with my laptop propped on a table sticky with spilled juice, and I read Driscoll's email 3 times. It was calculated. He used phrases like pattern of disengagement and failure to maintain professional standards. He referenced 2 deliverables that he claimed were overdue, both of which I knew had been submitted on time because I'd confirmed the timestamps myself from my hospital chair. Then I did something I wouldn't normally do. I went through every single email, every call log, every text message I'd exchanged with Driscoll over the past 3 months. I organized them chronologically. I pulled Teslin's notes from the week, showing every call she'd taken, every update she'd delivered. I pulled the project management software logs, showing that every milestone was green. I even found the email where Driscoll had told Nadia I was refreshingly competent, dated 6 weeks before he tried to get me fired. I put it all in a document. Clean, factual, no emotion. Just evidence. When I sent it to Nadia, she called me within 10 minutes. "This is thorough," she said. I had time. My daughter was sleeping. There was a pause. "Sable, I'm bringing this to the partners meeting tomorrow. But I want you to know, even without this, I was going to fight for you." "I know, but I wanted to fight for myself too." The partners meeting happened the next morning. I wasn't there. I was signing Ellery's discharge papers, helping her into a wheelchair, and carrying a bag full of hospital-issued socks and coloring books. Nadia presented my documentation to the 3 managing partners. She also presented something I didn't know she had: a record of Driscoll's calls to the office, including timestamps, duration, and Teslin's written summaries of each conversation. Teslin had been keeping her own notes the entire week, not because anyone asked her to, but because she'd sensed where things were heading. "I knew he was building a case," Teslin told me later. "I could hear it in his voice. Every call got a little more aggressive, a little more specific with the language. So I started writing everything down: dates, times, exact quotes when I could remember them." I asked her why she hadn't told me while it was happening. "Because you were in a hospital with your kids, Sable. You didn't need one more thing to carry. I figured I'd carry this one." That's the kind of friend Teslin is. The kind who fights for you behind your back because she knows you're already fighting something in front of you. Nadia's presentation painted a very clear picture, not of a concerned client, of a man who had been told a woman was unavailable due to a family emergency and had responded by escalating, misrepresenting facts, and attempting to have her removed. The partners sided with Nadia. They sent Driscoll a formal response acknowledging his concerns, presenting the project status documentation, and noting that all deliverables were current. They also informed him that if he wished to continue the engagement, the firm stood behind its project team, including me. Driscoll's response was to pull the contract. Nobody was surprised. Nadia said the partners had anticipated it and had already reviewed the financial impact. It was significant. His account represented about 12% of our quarterly revenue, but they held firm. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't kept those receipts. And it reminds me that trusting good people isn't enough. You have to give them something to work with. The fallout settled slowly, the way dust does after something collapses. There were a few hard weeks at the firm. Losing the Driscoll account meant tightening the budget. One contractor's renewal got delayed. Nadia absorbed some of the workload herself to avoid layoffs. I felt the weight of that, the guilt of being the reason, even though I knew I wasn't really the reason. Teslin shut that down fast. We were eating lunch in the break room about a week after everything settled, and I said something about feeling responsible for the lost revenue. She put her fork down and looked at me. Sable, a man lied about your work because you weren't available to cater to his ego for 5 days. You didn't lose that client. He fired himself. The firm still took the hit. And the firm chose to take it because they knew you were worth more than his contract. Stop carrying his weight. Ellery recovered fully. It took about 3 weeks before she was back to her normal self, complaining about homework, negotiating for later bedtimes, and asking me every other day if she could get a cat. The hospital stay left a mark on both of us, though. She started sleeping with her door open, and I started keeping my phone volume on high, even at night, just in case. Crane called during the hospital stay, once. He asked if Ellery was okay, if I needed money for the bills, and then said he'd try to come visit soon. He didn't come. Ellery didn't mention it. I didn't either. There are disappointments you stop naming out loud, because naming them doesn't change anything. About 2 months later, I was at my desk when Nadia forwarded me an email without comment. It was from a hotel chain, a new client inquiry, bigger than Driscoll's account. In the email, they mentioned they'd heard about our firm from a colleague and specifically asked to work with the project manager who handled the Driscoll redesign. I read it twice. Then I walked into Nadia's office. "Did you see this?" I asked. She was smiling. Driscoll's former business partner. Apparently, Vance burned that bridge too. The partner liked our work and wants to bring his own portfolio to us. You're kidding. I'm not. And he asked for you by name. I stood in her doorway and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not relief, exactly, but something close. Like a door opening in a room I thought had no exits. Some things don't resolve the way you hope. They resolve the way they're supposed to, which is messier, slower, and usually more honest. I never heard from Vance Driscoll again. No apology, no retraction, nothing. I heard through the industry grapevine that he'd gone through 2 more design firms in the year after leaving ours, and that his reputation for being difficult had finally started preceding him. I didn't celebrate that, but I didn't feel sorry for him either. Ellery asked me once, months later, what had happened at work while she was in the hospital. I gave her the simplified version. A client was unhappy. It got sorted out. She thought about it for a second, then said, "Did you win?" I laughed. "Yeah, baby. I think I did." "Good," she said. "You always win when you're mad." She wasn't wrong. Have you ever had someone try to tear down your work when you were already going through the hardest time of your life? And what gave you the strength to push back? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. There's a new story here every week, and I promise you'll find one that feels like yours. See you in the next one.